All right, so as I said, in 2020, I became like a leftist communist again, anti-white. Um, and like I said, a big part of the reason why I think was because I was kind of rebelling against my grandpa's like take responsibility for everything teaching, and his like what I felt was a mistreatment by my dad and my grandpa with the like right wing type of orientation of no compassion, not talking to me, throw me to the side and everything. So this was kind of like one example of stuff I wrote in my Based on True Story book that was very left wing communist. Was I was basically talking about like um you know how they say or like black people they'll say like, oh, we was kings, we was kings, we were kings and stuff. And I was like, for a long time I was saying how I was considered one of the best players in the country. People don't know how good I was. I wish I had more videos. And I had a good amount of videos, or decent, but like I said, even the few that I had were lost. My mom didn't record my games because she wanted to watch, or because she was too afraid to make mistakes. She had anxiety issues. My dad wanted to watch and couldn't watch and record at the same time. But regardless, I wish I had more videos so people could see how good I was. Because I was really incredible. I was doing things nobody does. And just because I was unconscious. And it's like almost like it's not arrogant because it wasn't me that was doing it. I was unconscious. And that's why the shoot away machine messed me up so much, because picking the ball off the rack, it made me put my feet the wrong way. I couldn't move into it right. And then my dad tried to fix it, told me to do it even worse, tried to make me shoot sideways, but tried to make me artificially do it rather than automatically the way that I used to do it based off how I moved into the shots. But I didn't know it was because how I moved into shots. And they can't do it picking the ball off a rack. So my point is, though, I wanted to tell people how good I was and show people, because I had been abused. And at that point in my life in 2020, I had lost the swag flow. I was in a bad state. And I didn't want, people to think that, that I was always this way. And I was kind of crazy at the time. I was confused at the time. And I didn't want people to think that I was always that way. And I wanted people to know how good I was. And, and I think that a big part of the craziness that occurred was because of the abuse that occurred. If my mom and dad, I felt like, were better parents, and they would have just helped me get basketball videos, I could have got the swag flow back. If they would have just listened to me. But there was a lot of trauma, there was a lot of abuse, and I feel like it was a big part of it was because they abused me with the shoot away. When I had the shoot away machine, my mom and dad abused me, and they wanted to think there was something wrong with me. And then when I showed them the quadrant model, they're like, oh, my mom was like, yeah, this was what was wrong with you. It was because you had schizophrenia, and that's why your dad beat you up. But I actually discovered the theory of everything. I didn't have schizophrenia. And that wasn't the reason my dad beat me up. It was because of the shoot-away machine and all that. But they wanted to think there was something wrong with me. So at this point, I'm like, yeah, things are not good for me, but it's because of, the shoot-away machine. It's because of the trauma that I went through. And I want people to know how good I was, that it wasn't my fault. And I would have stayed good if it wasn't for the shoot-away. And I think the same thing happens with black people, where black people are like, we was kings, we were kings. Like, I felt like, white people would be like, oh, or just people in general, white people, brown people, but people who aren't black, they'll be like, oh, well, they must have deserved it. Look at how they act now. Look at their state now. They're not doing so hot. And so they must have deserved the mistreatment before, because, they were probably the same as they were before. But they say, no, we weren't. We were kings. And, it was a slavery. It was the mistreatment. It was the trauma that brought us to our present state. But we were kings, So that's the way I was looking at it. So it's kind of a leftist way to look at it. But I wanted race mixing, and I wanted to make the white people the bad guys and the black people the good guys. But also at the same time, I had that agenda where I wanted people to know what was going on with me. And I wanted my mom and dad to talk to me. My mom and dad hadn't really talked to me since high school. And they believed I had schizophrenia, but I didn't, And how could they believe I had schizophrenia if they don't even see me? They hadn't even seen me, really. And that's the thing, is like, I would bump into people and they'd be like, well, your parent, people probably thought I did have schizophrenia. They didn't know I discovered the theory of everything. And people make assumptions. And that's the thing that sucks. And then people will think like, oh yeah, your parents must know, your dad's a doctor, they must know. But no, my dad hadn't seen me in years. My dad hadn't seen me since high school, really. This is 2020. This is like, I graduated college in 2013. So I'm like, no, it wasn't, I was really great, and I really did discover the theory of everything, but if I wasn't in a good state at that point, I've lost the swag flow and all that. But, like I said, the shootaway machine messed up my shot and messed up my basketball. That's number one. But number two, if my family would have just helped me get the basketball videos of when I was younger, I could have studied the swag flow. I'm not going to get into swag flow right now, what that means, but I'd lost the swag flow at that time. So things were not going so good. But, I wanted people to know how good I was before, kind of like how black people were like, want people to know how good they were before. To say like, no, it's, it's because of the trauma. It's because of the white people. It's because of the abuse. So, but again, I had the anti-white leftist mentality because I wanted white people to mix because I saw myself as Jewish and I saw white people as the biggest threat. So, but my point is, so I was talking like that. That's some of the stuff I wrote in the Based on True Story book. And then also I was writing about like, I basically try to make black people into like Jesus, into like saviors of humanity, into like gods pretty much, right? Like I said, I like the Nation of Islam where they make the black man the god, right? So I was like, so I kind of like, in my Based on True Story book, I kind of drew a parallel between like, what was those guys' names? The black guy who was killed, Brown, or what was his name? Jared Brown or something. I forget his name, but those black guys who were killed that started the Black Lives Matter riots. Like I wanted to, Michael Brown, I think was one of them, and there was another one. I forget his name, but Mike Brown and those guys. So I was like, I wanted to make them into like Jesus figures, like they were crucified. And so, because I was like a leftist and I saw myself as Jewish, and I wanted to make the black people into like the saviors and I wanted to make them into Jesus. And again, also I wanted to undermine Christianity and destroy Christianity because I saw Christianity as white related, and I wanted the white people to mix with the black people and stuff. So I wanted to destroy, and I was like killing two birds with one stone, right? It's so crazy. But I was like trying to make Mike Brown into like a crucified figure, and like all black people into like crucified figures, that they're like Jesus, because I was like, Jesus was abused in his life, and that's probably why he believed that he was God, because when you have trauma, then you kind of develop schizophrenia, and you start to try to compensate for the trauma and the abuse, because once you've been abused and stuff, then people like that one thing where people will blame the abuser and then they'll continue to abuse you, and it creates a snowball. And I was saying like that's the same thing that happened with me, with my family. They abused me and they wanted to blame the abuser, but it wasn't me. It was a shootaway machine and stuff, and they didn't want to believe the quadrilateral because they wanted to justify the abuse that was before. So my mom jumped on like, oh, he must have schizophrenia. No, I didn't have schizophrenia. I discovered the theory of everything. Grow up. But it's a sad thing. So I was like, once abuse happens, it continues. And, same thing with Jesus. Probably, he was abused. He grew up as a bastard, so he didn't have much, people thought he was a bastard, so he didn't have much, support, because people thought he was a bastard. He didn't necessarily grow up as a bastard, but, people thought he was a bastard because, and I was just like, yeah. So then he became kind of schizophrenic, and he thought that he was God and stuff like that. And, it was the outcome of abuse and stuff. And I was trying to say the same thing happened with the black people, or black people be like, we was kings, or we're gods and stuff. And I was like, that's an outcome of abuse. To compensate, when you're been abused, then my grandpa would say your ego becomes fragile. And then you it leads to a lot of problems. And then to try to compensate for it, you say, hey, I'm a god, or I'm a king. And that's to strengthen your ego, to kind of compensate for the trauma and the abuse that's occurring. And it kind of builds you up. Say, hey, no, I'm not a piece of shit. I'm a king. I'm a god. And, or I was a king, and stuff like that. So I had kind of like a leftist agenda though. And I was killing two birds with one stone. Like I was trying to say that Jesus was just a schizophrenic, but then also, but the same thing happened with the black people, and the black people are really like Jesus, and they're like gods, and but I wanted to be like, yeah, well, Jesus, he was abused, but then he was a victim of abuse, and I want to say, black people are victims of abuse, and the outcome is what you see now, the riots, and we're gods, we're kings, and it's a kind of a reaction against the abusers to try to reclaim power, to try, because they don't have any power. So to try to reclaim power, you say, no, we're gods, we're kings. And I was like, but then people say, oh, well, see, they're arrogant, look how crazy they are. You know, they must have deserved the slavery. And same thing with me. Like I was like, yeah, look how crazy he is. Look how crazy he's acting. He must have deserved the abuse that happened with his parents. But I'm like, no. Again, victim blaming. The crazy behavior is an outcome of the abuse, and not the crazy behavior caused the abuse. But that's what I thought a lot of people like to think. And again, but now when I look at it, it's like, of course, sometimes that's the case. Sometimes that's the case, but it's not always the case. Sometimes it's the case that people deserve the abuse. Sometimes, sometimes victim blaming is accurate, but not always. And I felt like in my case, it was not accurate. Now, when I was a right winger, I wanted to be like, well, maybe in the black people's case, it's not accurate either. Like maybe they did kind of deserve the abuse. But then when I became a left winger communist again, I wanted to be like, no, they didn't deserve the abuse, and their crazy treatment now is a reaction to the trauma and a reaction to the outcome of the abusive system or the abuse that they faced by the white people, right? Or just in general. So, but I wanted race mixing, and I wanted to be like, black man is God, or, Mike Brown and all those guys they're really just victims, or really just Jesus. They're really just Christ figures who were crucified. They're really martyrs, And I wanted to be like, and I wanted to be against victim blaming, the right wing victim blaming. And, as my grandpa would be like, take responsibility. All you can do is take responsibility, But I'm like, no, it's not all about taking responsibility. A lot of times there is forces to blame, and sometimes people are victims. And, and I don't think it's healthy to always try to take responsibility. So that's the way I was trying to do. But again, I think I had an agenda. I saw myself as Jewish, and I wanted to raise the black people and mix the white people with the black people and destroy the white people. So, but in my Based on True Story book, my point is, like, I was very leftist and very pro-black, and I was, trying to talk about, basically blame the white man. The reason why there's the violence in the black community and stuff is because of the white man, and, the gentrification and the redlining and, all that stuff, and it's all the white man's fault, and, and all that, and I think a big part of it is because, too, the reason why I was inclined toward that was because I thought, like, I hated how people would victim blame Jews. Like, they would be like, oh, well, you've been kicked out of 169 countries, and we're the problem, and you're not the problem, and they would victim blame and be like, well, it's because of the Jews. But I wanted to be like, no, yeah, it is you the problem, you white people. You guys made the Jews into the bankers because, you weren't allowed to do money lending because of Christianity, and it's actually your, you try to blame the victim, the Jews, but you guys are really the evil ones. And I wanted to be like, Jews got along really well with Arabs, and you white people, we didn't, because clearly it's not something wrong with the Jews, clearly it's something wrong with you white people, But I think, again, like, the reason why I liked Arabs was because I don't see Arabs as a threat. I saw myself as Jewish, and like Arabs, like, you don't see Arabs as a threat. And I wanted Arabs to mix with white people, and I wanted to make the Arabs really good, and I didn't like white people. So I wanted to mix them, and I wanted to believe, like, oh, like, there was another rabbi who did that, one of the Chabad type of rabbis who was like with Oprah. I forget his name, but he was a rabbi with Oprah, and he said the same type of stuff, like, blacks should get reparations, and, Jews got along really well with the Arabs, and, it's not normal that, that now the Arabs don't like the Jews. I wanted to be like, yeah, Jews get along well with Arabs because Jews and Arabs are good people, but white people are the bad people. And, and the white people victim blame the Jews, like, oh, you're kicked out of 169 countries, and it's our fault. But I was like, no, it is your fault. You guys are the bad guys. So I wanted to be against victim blaming, and I wanted to be, blame the oppressor, right? The white man, because I wanted the race mixing. So now, is there some truth to that too? I don't know. Maybe there is. Maybe white people are evil, but that's the way I wanted to see it at that time, right? Now, and at that time, I wanted to kind of believe what the Black Hebrew Israelites teach, like that Esau is the devil, right? And and I wanted to believe that he was mixed with Hittites, and Hittites were actually Indo-Europeans, and really the Europeans are the devils on this planet. If it wasn't for them, so, and I like that, the Black Lives Matter riots, and the black people would be posting posts like, yeah, you white people are not natural. You guys are the worst, the worst part of the earth. And, the natural man's going to take over. And I liked all that. And I remember when I was a leftist, like when I was in college, I remember like one time a black person posted something like, there was some sexy a picture of some sexy white girls, and the black guy was like, the white women aren't the devil, but the white man is. Like, but he's like, I ain't got nothing against white women though. And he's like, yeah, I like them white women. But I remember at the time I was like, dude, stop talking like that, because I wanted the race mixing to happen. But I was like, but if you talk like that, you're not going to let the race mixing happen, because white people are going to get mad and it's going to cause problems. So let's just transcend dualistic software and just be calm and just chill out, quit saying stupid shit like that, and then let the race mixing happen and destroy the white people. But, but at this time I took the black people's side, and I was just like, yeah, the black people are the victims and the victim blamers, but really they're the good guys. They're the bad guys, but really bad is good, because the only reason why they're bad is because of the abuse that they face by the white man. So really the white man's bad. And, I wanted to do the race mixing whole thing, right? But also, it was true, though. Like, I did also feel that my parents not talking to me and the abuse that I was facing was due to the whole victim blaming thing. And I thought that they were immature. But even my grandpa agrees with that. Even my grandpa thinks that. But my point is, my whole based on true story book that I wrote at that time was like a communist, leftist, anti-white manifesto. And what else did I say in it that I want to talk about? So... yeah, so, basically the way I wanted to see it was like, black people are the original, and they're actually the real humans, and white people are mixed with Neanderthals, and they're inbred, and, and I wanted to see the white people as just basically innately evil, and that's why white people did what they did. Now, I think when I became more right-wing, I wanted to be like, no, white people weren't evil. The reason why they went down and they colonized was because of, what's it called, climate, because it was cold up there and they wanted to go down, and white people aren't bad. And again, like, when I was a right winger, I wanted to believe like, oh no, Adam might have been the first white man. That's what the British Israelites teach. Like, Adam was the first white man, so he's the only real human. And some people say that the black people are mixed with Homo erectus, right? So that they're not even really necessarily completely human. But my point is, at that time, I wanted to look down upon white people, and I made like a communist leftist manifesto for the black people. And I also did like the anti-Christian stuff. So for instance, like my grandpa had that teaching, like, the good I would, Paul says, the good I would, I do not, but that which I would not, I end up doing. And that's the idea. My grandpa would talk about transcending dualistic software to the flow, to inspiration, because like you try to do good, and that's like calculative, dualistic, rational thinking, but then you end up doing bad. So like one example that a right winger could give is like, you try to stop climate change, but then, you make the world cooler, but then an ice age occurs. So you try to do good, but you end up doing bad. And that's what a right winger might say. But at this time when I was a leftist, I wanted to take the left wing orientation. So I was like, yeah, an example. And when I was writing my based on true story book at that time that I posted online, I was like, an example of this would be like, the Christians, the white people who tried to make the Africans Christians. Like, they thought that they were doing good, but really the African native religions were actually superior. And they as my grandpa teaches, like, there is no true religion, just the rituals of the Africans can also get them in the flow, because it will make them transcend their impulses and transcend their whims, and and other people, as this is what my grandpa taught, right? And that can help them get into the flow. So it doesn't matter what rituals you follow. So the Africans, their religions were no worse than Christians, and the Christians try to help the Africans, but then they end up making them dependent, or then they end up actually hurting them. And the good that the Christians thought they were doing was not actually good. So, but again, when my grandpa would try to teach, like, no, there's a higher aspirations behind the Christians trying to make the Africans into Christians. It was to create oneness, and that's a higher aspiration. And but I was anti-white and I was anti-Christian, because first off, I was anti-religion, because I wanted to make, everybody mix. And I thought that religion divides people. And I was also anti-Christian, especially because I saw Christian as white. So, I wanted to be like, no, the African religions, were not as good. So they thought they were doing good. The white people thought they were doing good, but they ended up just doing bad. And as Paul said, the good I would, I do not, but that which I would not, I end up doing. And, and my grandpa taught that Jesus was not really God. And I like that aspect. I like that part of my grandpa's teaching, that Jesus was like, he just saw God as energy, and Jesus knew he was one with energy. And, you know, I like those ideas, so I would incorporate those into my based on true story book. But then at the same time, I would like, so basically I was just anti-white, trying to create race mixing. So I became a leftist communist again. And what else? Yeah. I guess I'll continue in the next lecture.